What's going on, fellas? Everybody wants success until they see how much success really costs. Because people think becoming successful means money, women, freedom, status, influence. But what nobody talks about is the pressure, the isolation, the humiliation, the public criticism, the feeling of the entire world turning against you overnight. And fellas, whether you like Drake or not, what happened or the situation or the beef between Drake and Kendrick is probably one of the most greatest mindset lessons that we can learn from today. Because the thing about this beef is it wasn't just about rap. This was an emotional warfare. This was about reputation, psychological warfare, identity warfare. And the biggest lesson, the same world or the same crowd that praises you can turn on you instantly overnight. But the question is, right, after your closest friends saying that you moving different, right? After the jealous associate that you've been nothing but nice to talk shit behind your back, whether the chicks you were talking to start acting funny on you, what do you do after all that happens? Do you collapse? Do you panic? Or do you stay patient? Do you stay disciplined? Do you just keep building in silence because you know eventually at that 32 degrees that the truth will reveal itself? Because whether people want to admit it or not, Drake surviving this situation and potentially coming back with 1, 2, or 3 of the biggest projects of this year is a masterclass of emotional endurance. And in this video, I'm gonna break down the real lesson that men need to learn from this entire situation. And this isn't coming from a rap perspective. We're not saying who's the better rapper, who has the most hits, or none of that nonsense. This is coming from a him tier mindset perspective of self-improvement, self-development. Because honestly, fellas, if you want to become exceptional in life, eventually you're gonna run into these things. You're gonna run into two-faced friends. You're gonna run into jealous family members. You're gonna run into, hating peers. You're gonna experience your own version of this. And if you're not mentally prepared for it, it's gonna destroy you. So just to start this off, fellas, one of the hardest lessons men must learn: people are only loyal to momentum, not truth, not history, but momentum. The moment, and we've seen it all the time, the moment that public opinion shifts, people shift with it. Look at what happened. Drake for years, what he said, 16 years, for over a decade, he was unstoppable, untouchable, dominating the charts, dominating the culture, killing the numbers, killing the billboards. Then suddenly it's like the internet felt like they sensed some vulnerability when things got a little rocky. And what happened after that? People started piling on. They started posting memes, cracking jokes. They started spreading false narratives about him. It seems like everybody became a critic overnight. Why? The main reason is because people love associating themselves with whoever appears to be winning, right? And the key word here is appear, right? I think a lot of people took Drake's patience for weakness, but when you're kind of like building in silence, I think the element of surprise is the sweetest fruit when you decide to press that button. But of course, everybody wants to be on the winning team, right? That's just human nature. And this is why you cannot build your identity based off external validation, because it can change overnight. You can't control it, because fellas, applause is temporary, right? Or even in this case, 16 years. But one bad decision, right? Your opposition makes, one good product, or your opposition or your opponent, makes one good move, or, you slip a little bit. One mistake, one public embarrassment. And then the people who once praised you will begin to question you and question everything about you, like you're not him. Him tier men understand that if your confidence depends on an external applause or validation, you're emotionally fragile. And that's just the truth. That's why a lot of the weak men and the dudes that get lost in the sauce, they weren't about likes, they weren't about attention, compliments, approval, acceptance. But exceptional men, they move with a purpose while being misunderstood. Because we understand something more dangerous. The viewers, the followers, the crowd, they move off emotion. They want to be on the winning team, right? They go wherever the momentum is shifting. Fellas, I want to take it back to the video where I had a viewer say that I fell off. I think that's a perfect scenario to touch on this topic, because if I was worried about comments, right? If I was worried about validation, right? If I was worried about opinions, which don't get me wrong, like I definitely used to, right? But when I understand my purpose, when I understand my intent, all the external things that I can't control seem to be a little less important to me. Approval and acceptance is nowhere near the importance of my purpose and why I'm doing what I do. So I could have easily seen that comment and got emotional, or I could have kept building my channel. I could have kept putting my reps in. I could have improved my content, which I did. But a weak man, fellas, would have crashed out and got emotional, which, let's talk about emotional control, right? Because this is where most men fail. Everybody expected Drake to crash out. People probably expected emotional interviews, angry live streams, social media meltdowns, but instead he like disappeared. While Kendrick was performing at Super Bowl, while he was winning awards for the diss song, for the disrespect, while Drake's, some of Drake's friends that he considered close friends, like LeBron James and DJ Khaled and everyone else was choosing sides, Drake just sat back in silence and disappeared. And that silence was powerful, because most people expose their weakness under pressure, because pressure reveals emotional instability. We've seen it 100 times, right? The moment that life hits a weak man, he starts to panic. Right? He starts to overshare information. He becomes reactive. He starts to self-destruct. I've been there, right? I've been back against the wall, on the ledge, just, under real pressure, bro. I've seen emotions destroy more men than failure does. Because when you become emotional, one false statement, one wrong move, one wrong step, and it's over. Reputation over, career over, everything you worked for 16 years, it's over. A man who cannot control himself under pressure becomes dangerous to his own future. That's why a lot of people ruin their careers, ruin their relationships, ruin opportunities. Temporary actions can create permanent damage. But with Drake staying relatively composed during all of this shit going on, possibly the biggest public attack of his career, that's a lesson, because silence frustrates people who expect emotional responses. Every situation doesn't necessarily need a reaction. Sometimes your greatest weapon is actually remaining calm and staying silent when somebody wants you to overreact or wants you to break and trick you out your spot. Now, here's the most important lesson in this entire video. What did Drake ultimately do? He went back to work. That's it. As you can see, he gave us 3 full albums. He didn't give us excuses. He didn't give us the victim mentality bullshit. He didn't disappear forever. He was creating. As you can see, he was sitting back creating, being very strategic. And this is where most people fail in life. The average person becomes emotionally paralyzed under embarrassment. One failure destroys them. One rejection destroys them. One breakup destroys them. One public mistake destroys them. Then what happens? They stop building. But real winners, they understand your greatest revenge is improvement, fellas. Your greatest response is results. The internet wanted him finished. The industry wanted him finished. And instead of Drake on the internet trying to convince people online that this wasn't the case, he took that energy and focused on creating something that was undeniable. That mentality applies to every aspect in life. You get rejected, job don't want you, chick deny you, improve yourself. You lost money, rebuild. You got embarrassed publicly, grow stronger. People laughing at you, work harder. Because arguing with people and going back and forth rarely changes perception anyway. The only thing that really changes perception is results. And this is why discipline matters so much. Because that motivation that the average man relies on, that shit disappears after humiliation. Anybody can work when they feel confident. My first couple videos, thousands of views, right? It was easy to keep dropping videos after that. But when that view count starts to drop, when you start to get less comments, when you getting videos that only getting 50 views and 80 views and one comment or no comments at all, can you continue executing? Are you going to continue pushing? Are you going to continue to grind during that 0 to 32 degrees, or are you going to make excuses? That's the difference in mentality. Now this next lesson is uncomfortable, but it's definitely necessary. The internet and even the people close to you and around you and your peers, they love destruction. People love watching people fail. For some reason, people love watching other people fall. And it's weird, but that's why negative media and negative videos and things like that get more love and more views than the positive shit. Why? Because it really temporarily makes average people feel comfortable about their own life, right? Like if people see you fail, they'll rather watch that, because even though they've been failing their whole life, seeing you fail makes them feel more comfortable about them failing. That's why gossip spreads faster than achievement. People will believe a negative thing about you before they believe a positive thing about you. Most people don't want the truth. People will hear something, and before we even get to the bottom of it, before we even know if it's facts or anything, we've already made our judgment. And that's because people don't actually want the truth. People want entertainment. They want the drama. They want the chaos. They want someone to point the finger at. They want somebody to laugh at. That's why becoming emotionally dependent on public approval is so dangerous, because crowds are unstable. One day they with you, the next day they on somebody else. One week you're the greatest, the next week you're finished. We seen it with the Gunna situation. While they said it the best, they love you, then they hate you, then they love you again. The outsiders are literally like emotionally inconsistent, which means you must become emotionally stable when you're going through your journey. The main thing that I tell my fellas in HTU is you can't allow social media narratives to control your self-worth. Now here's a deeper psychological lesson, right? Anybody can feel confident while winning. Confidence is easy when, like I said, you getting thousands of views, you getting hundreds of comments, you getting hundreds of likes, everybody supporting you, everything's going well, life feeling smooth, right? Life's getting comfortable. But what happens when people mock you, when people doubt you, when people laughing at you, when people questioning your value, when people telling you too old to start a YouTube channel? That's when your identity gets tested for real. And most men fail right there. And the reason that embarrassment breaks them is because their self-belief was never real. It may have felt real in the moment when you were getting that external praise from your peers and family members, but that moment that the validation disappears, I've seen a lot of men confidence disappear with it. That's why so many people quit their businesses, their content creations, their fitness journeys, their goals, their dreams. The second they experience criticism and embarrassment, they retreat, right? They retreat because their self-belief wasn't as strong as they thought it was. That's why Drake continuing to move forward, that shit matters psychologically, because it shows that his identity wasn't completely dependent on public approval. And that's a major lesson to men. You can't allow public perception to determine your private belief, because if the world controls your confidence, you'll never be free. You'll never be successful if your confidence is dependent on social media and the outsiders. Another dangerous mindset people have is people think one loss erases everything. People act like one beef, right? Like let's just say hypothetically, because people have different perceptions on the beef, but let's just say, right, for the people who said that Drake lost the beef, they still acting like that erased years of dominance. Like that erased his consistency, his influence, his work ethic. And I used to do this to myself too. I used to make one little small mistake and I used to think everything was over, right? I used I used to give up, but then I had to realize, like, hell no, like that's not what that means. Just because you had a bad chapter, that don't mean your whole story is done. It's been plenty of times I was ready to give up on myself, but I had to realize that I can't base my entire identity based off one bad season. As I read books and I researched some of the greatest men, they've all had setbacks, they've all had failures, they've all had humiliations, they've all had losses, they've all had dark seasons. But the difference between those great men and the average men is a lot of the average men, they quit during those seasons. But exceptional men, they survived them, they pushed through them. Another thing this Drake situation proves is patience is powerful, because with everything going on and everybody turning their back against them and everybody leaving them, most men would have been too emotional to even think long term. They would have panicked, probably would have quit. But emotional, intelligent men realize that time changes narratives. Sometimes the worst thing you can do is react too quickly. And if Drake would have went online trying to argue with everybody and prove his point to everybody, these albums that he dropped probably wouldn't have meant as much. But the fact that he stayed silent and he stayed patient instead of throwing out emotional responses and actually staying strategically disciplined, when he finally did drop, people were more interested in hearing what he had to say. Not every battle needs immediate retaliation. Silence wins, consistency wins, results win. And again, fellas, I think a lot of people took Drake's patience as a weakness, but patience isn't weakness. Patience is actually maturity, right? That means you're analyzing the entire situation and you're planning your next move. Because at the end of the day, this whole beef or whatever you want to call it, it was never checkers, it was always chess. So let's take all of these lessons, fellas, and let's bring it back to you, because eventually life is going to humble you. Maybe not publicly, but mentally, emotionally, financially, spiritually. You're going to feel moments where people are going to backstab you, people are going to doubt you, that support is going to disappear, life is going to feel a little heavy, like you're going to feel like you're by yourself, your motivation is going to vanish, right? That embarrassment may hit you. And during those moments, fellas, your habits and your system is what's going to save you. That's why in Hamza University, we push the gym, we push structure, we push routine, we push discipline, we push purpose, we push self-improvement, because that discipline is what keeps men alive during those dark times. Without structure, most men will collapse. Like, for example, fellas, like when I was going through one of the darkest times of my life, I turned to the gym. I turned to my books and I turned to the gym, because the gym taught me that regardless of your feelings and how you feel, you still got to show up. And that lesson transfers into my real life. That's why, to me, fitness is deeper than just aesthetics. It builds mental resilience, and resilience is required to be him. So at the end of the day, fellas, that Drake versus Kendrick situation, it was never just music. It was a lesson about pressure, perception, patience, resilience, emotional endurance. And the biggest question every man must ask himself is this: can you continue building while being misunderstood? Can you remain disciplined while feeling embarrassed? Can you stay focused when you're being doubted? Can you survive that public embarrassment without abandoning yourself? Because most men can't, and that's why most men remain average. Success is not just built through talent, right? We've talked about this in the past. It's built through hard work and emotional endurance. And the men who learn how to survive pressure without losing themselves eventually separates themselves from everybody else. Trust me, fellas, I've been in that fire. I felt that embarrassment. I've been in my mid-20s still living with my mom. No car, no crib. All my friends got their own shit. I felt that embarrassment, being broke, trying to swipe my card in Walmart, and it's getting declined because my bank account is negative $10. I felt that embarrassment. I felt that embarrassment of not being able to get fly clothes and a haircut. I felt that embarrassment. Publicly, privately, but the thing is, that embarrassment never broke me, and that's one of the reasons why I'm him today. So fellas, if you want me to help you build elite discipline and mental toughness, create a structured routine that's based around your purpose and your growth, and become the man who performs under pressure instead of folding like a bitch, then click the link in the description below. Book a call and we'll see if you're a good fit. But understand, fellas, this is not for everybody. You've seen the level of consistency, the sacrifice, the discipline, the long days, the dark nights, the emotional control that it takes to become him. Most people just talk, but very few people actually execute. So if you're truly ready to evolve, then let's get to work. Because brother, when you commit, it's not just you anymore, it's us. Again, fellas, take a look at that calendar. We almost 50% through this motherfucker. It's time to stop playing. It's time to perform.